Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is the sequel to one of the most famous horror movies ever made. It takes place 13 years after the events of the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we learn that after Sally told authorities what she saw, she slipped into a catatonic state and the police were never able to locate the farmhouse or the killers. Which means that this dude must have been lying to his wife about where he was that day, so he never came forward for fear of her finding out, and this poor dude was most likely killed by the family and his truck scrapped, otherwise they should have very easily found this house. Like, just follow the smell. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre took place in the 70s and had that raw, gritty feel that the 70s were known for.
Hook 'em horns, baby! We are on our way to the biggest party of the world!
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 takes place in the 80s. I'm sorry, this is what we had to work with back then. A lot of cocaine was just flooding the movie industry. And so these two cartoon characters are listening to the radio station hosted by Stretch as they cause mayhem down the highway, including playing chicken with his truck.
Let's play a little chicken with the farmer here.
Okay, you don't keep getting in the way of the car when they move. That's not chicken, that's like squirrel. And we learned that in Texas in the 80s, you could hold a radio station hostage by calling and refusing to hang up the phone.
Hey, you wanna hang up now? Tying up the line.
No way, baby!
We got a lot more in front! LG!
Damn it, I'm trying, darling.
Oh my God!
They gotta hang up.
Can you just hang up the phone? Now, I don't know much about making phone calls in the early 80s, but was this a thing? Like, if you called someone and never hung up, could they just never get rid of you? Also, why is she answering her own calls at the station? Why can't her producer LG do it? And these two a-holes are crossing a bridge when they find the truck that they ran off the road blocking their way. The truck begins to chase them, and a weird chainsaw-wielding freak wearing a corpse starts slashing at their car. And this freak is none other than the big old goof Leatherface. And he's wearing the corpse of his brother, the hitchhiker, from the first movie. Don't feel bad for the hitchhiker, this was in his will. And so Stretch is listening in the whole time as these two douchebags get murdered by Leatherface. The next day, the police are on the scene, including Lieutenant Lefty Enright, played by Dennis Hopper. And he's the uncle of Sally and Franklin from the original, and he thinks that this accident is the work of the same killers. Lefty asks that they put something in the paper asking for any witnesses or anyone with any information to come forward. So Stretch goes to Lefty's hotel room with the tape of the murder, and he just dismisses her and tells her that he works alone. Like, this dude has been chasing this family for 14 years, no one even believes that they're real, and he's desperate for any leads, and when he finally gets one, he just ignores it. I think Dennis Hopper was just done filming for the day and they just couldn't get any more out of him. And at the same hotel, they're holding the Texas-Oklahoma chili cook-off, and first place gets a trophy overflowing with chili. Are you supposed to transport that in your car? The winner of the chili cook-off is none other than the cook from the original, and now he has a name, Drayton Sawyer, and he's clearly using human meat in his chili. Lefty goes to a hardware store to buy chainsaws, and now when I go into a store, I try like hell to seem normal, especially a small business like this. I don't want them to worry that I'm a weirdo or some kind of psycho. I want them to be completely at ease. And then you have Lefty. He hasn't even said 2 words to the shop owner at this point. Like, I went into a small bookstore one time, and I accidentally knocked over some books on a display, and the owners were looking at me weird, and so I just bought them all so it didn't seem like I was trying to create a diversion while an accomplice was stealing stuff from the back. Like, I was there by myself. Lefty finally decides that he does need help, and he goes to the radio station and tells Stretch that he wants her to play the tape of the murder on the radio to flush out the killers. He hasn't even heard the tape yet. So she plays the tape every hour with like 0 segue and no setup.
So here's a special request for playing this every hour. This is for Lefty.
If I'm listening to a rock and roll station and they're playing the unedited audio from a chainsaw murder every hour, then they had better be giving the 9th caller tickets to something.
Sure got a lot of complaints, darling.
Damn, LG. Man, the days before COVID were wild. We are then introduced to another crazy-ass family member named Chop Top. And if your head doesn't itch before watching this movie, it will itch like crazy afterwards. Because Chop Top has a metal plate in his head, and he constantly heats up a coat hanger to scratch around it, and then eats the bits of flesh that he picks off. And Chop Top is the older brother of Leatherface, and he was in Vietnam during the events of the first movie, and he's taunting Stretch until Leatherface jumps out of the closet and chases her with a chainsaw. She's trapped behind a metal door when LG shows back up, and okay. And a little bit of trivia, LG stands for Louis Gee. Nice. They ambush LG inside and bash his head with a hammer, and LG died doing what he loved, spitting in his place of business. And Leatherface is not played by Gunnar Hansen this time around, and is instead played by Bill Johnson. Like, we realized Gunner was actually showing restraint. Leatherface breaks through the wall, and because audiences were clamoring for it back in the 80s, we then finally get to see how Leatherface acts when he's horny. So, just like most people. But Leatherface is now in love with Stretch, so he spares her and goes back and tells his brother that he murdered her anyways, because even though he is a rage-fueled psycho, he still doesn't want his brother to tease him about liking a girl. We've all been there.
Did you get that, bitch?
Oh yeah, man. I completely eviscerated that milky-skinned, long-legged goddess, sliced off her big old boobies. They take off and they take LG's body with them, and Stretch goes after them because Lefty never showed up. Part of me wonders if Dennis Hopper was supposed to be in this scene, but they just couldn't wake him up. She follows the brothers to Texas Battleland, and Lefty shows up right behind her. Oh, look who finally made it out of his trailer. Stretch falls comically far down a hole. And Lefty gets ready for a battle, and now dual-wielding chainsaws seems badass, but what a nightmare to actually use.
Oh Lord, help me beat this stranger that walks beside me.
It should be noted that this was not in the script. Hopper was just on a shit ton of mescaline at the time, and he was referring to his longtime friend and personal assistant Trent, who was standing just off camera. Oh my god, run, Trent! And you know, the angrily running and screaming towards the entrance kind of loses something when you have to stop and open the gate. Like, use your chainsaws, man. Lefty gets inside and notices some odd red liquid oozing out from behind a mural and, don't touch it, it's clearly blood. You are a law enforcement veteran. You should know what blood looks like just by sight. I've never liked those scenes in movies where the hero sees some suspicious liquid and touches it and then rubs it into their skin. Like, bonus points if they smell it, and super double bonus points if they taste it. And Stretch finds Leatherface skinning LG, and Leatherface notices that she's there. Oh, baby girl, what are you doing here? I said I'd call you. Oh, did you follow me to my house? Oh, that is so adorable. Oh, shh. I wrote you a poem. Check this out. I can't concentrate on my killing whenever we're apart. I want to peel off your face and wear it on my heart. She asks Leatherface to help her escape, and he puts LG's face over hers and starts dancing with her, and then he ties her up and then takes off. And LG is somehow still alive, but after this trauma, even if he survives, he will never be the same person. Oh, and LG says that he'll help untie her, and oh, careful now. I understand your face is torn off and it's difficult to see, but that's all the more reason to use short, deliberate movements, buddy.
Take it all out! Bring it all out! Bury the devil!
And poor Lefty this whole time has been upstairs screaming and chainsawing, and nobody's even noticed. And then he finds the body of his nephew Franklin. And it seems odd that after this family moved across the state and a decade and a half has passed, that they would still just have his body just sitting around in a wheelchair. You could have at least turned him into an end table or, ooh, a cool little bar cart. Leatherface begins chasing Stretch again, and she stops and then basically breaks up with him.
And this is not gonna work out.
Oh man, and tonight I was gonna give you my favorite taint baller to show you that I wanted to go steady. I can see the confusion on your face. See, a taint baller is kind of like a melon baller, but for the meat on the taint. And Drayton and Chop Top show up, and despite Leatherface's best efforts, his brothers start teasing him.
Bubba likes her. Bubba's got a girlfriend!
Like, it's just a universal thing with brothers. They knock her out and she wakes up at the head of the table for dinner.
To stoop my shoulders, taking care of my younger brothers. It squashed the young years out of my life like a can of cheese whip.
And I just realized that Drayton Sawyer is like a less angry Walter Matthau. I will not elaborate. And somehow their grandpa is still alive. Like, he was older than Dirt in the last one, and now he's 13 years older than Dirt. And as he struggles to hold a hammer again, Lefty finally shows up and the epic showdown begins. And Leatherface and Lefty are fighting with chainsaws, while Drayton just says, F it, and blows them all up with a grenade. Chop Top chases Stretch to the top of the structure, where we find a shrine to to the Sawyer's grandmother holding a chainsaw. Dretch manages to free the chainsaw from the bones, and in a demonstration of the least plausible aspect of these movies, she's able to get this old chainsaw, I mean at least old enough to be fused into a dead body, and she's able to fire it right up. Like, have you ever tried to fire up a chainsaw when it's just cold? And she kills Chop Top and then does the Leatherface dance. And that is it. The entire Sawyer family is dead, and you will never see them again.